Hey, David. Hey, David. Can you hear me? David, are you muted? I can't hear you. Can you hear me? Tamika, are you on? I see you're muted. I think that's you, Tamika.
Yes, it's me.
Okay. Can you hear? You can hear me, obviously.
I can hear you from here. From here, David's screen says, excuse me, connecting to audio.
Yeah, that's what I get too. David, we can't hear you, and it looks like it keeps saying connecting to audio. You may have to try call back in, or dial back in, or click back in. Oh wait.
Hi.
Oh, there we go.
So I will not I'll use the computer audio. Oh. All right, folks, we're just going to give it another minute and then we'll get started. Okay. All right. All right. I don't, everyone who's on, I see we were supposed to be creating links for you to get to the documents, but they were emailed to you as attachments. So if you could take a look at those documents, that would be great. And we'll just get started in a minute with those that we have on. All right, well, let's get started. So thanks everyone taking the time. I just added the agenda into the chat. For those of you that may or may not have the attachments that got sent. But basically, you know, we had done this a number of months ago and thought certainly in the context of the pandemic and everything everyone's going on, that we'd offer an opportunity to gather together and to be able to take a look at, what's going on with each of your organizations and what's going on with ASBC, particularly in the context of COVID-19 and, what it's meaning for our present work, but also to give you a sense of what the larger agenda looks like, and some of which obviously, will overlap, connect, intertwine with the work that we're doing around COVID-19. So the aim here was to, again, is to be able to share that with you, get your feedback on where and how we should be focusing, let others hear what you're working on so that you could see other points of opportunity and connections between some of the other state and local organizations. So we can foster that community of business, particularly now and for going forward. And then to, really just enable any further improvement around how ASBC can help move this work along. So that's the agenda that we have today. Hopefully, it'll get us started with the hour that we've allocated for this. So with that, I'm just going to go ahead and we're going to run through and just do quick introductions. And, but what I'd also say is, we did send out, the sort of a little survey on your campaign priorities and the like. And what we'll try to do is capture some of that on the phone now, but if you want to provide us with more detail, you have that document. And two, in addition, you also have ASBC's, latest document around, the policy focus that we have. So that's what you should have access to at the moment. And now, if we can, we'll sort of go through this and go around and let folks introduce, and I'll take them in the order that I see them at the moment. And so one, Richard Lawton. So if you could just do a little, you introduce yourself and maybe just, just a little bit top line on what the present focus is in terms of policy priorities that or campaigns that you're working on at the moment, so everyone gets a sense of what's going on.
All right, sounds good. I'm Richard Lawton. I'm the Executive Director of the New Jersey Sustainable Business Council. We're a state affiliate of ASBC. We started a little over 3 years ago, and we've got a couple of priorities right now we're working on. We just finished, in fact, a webinar on energy efficiency, which is part of a larger initiative. We're part of a coalition that's brought together by the Energy Foundation to make the business case for transitioning to a clean energy economy. And that's kind of centered around the Governor Murphy's executive order that sets 2050 as the goal for moving New Jersey to 100% clean energy. And so we've been actively involved in advocating for that, as well as the Energy Master Plan that was recently completed, which has components for expanding solar, offshore wind, and energy efficiency programs. So that's kind of like the larger umbrella that we're involved in with a lot of other organizations on, making the business case for and engaging with Board of Public Utilities and the Economic Development Authority for all those types of initiatives, including the recently passed EV bill, EV law, that is recognized as one of the most progressive electric vehicle laws in the states. And that's key since New Jersey, about 43% of all the carbon emissions come from the transportation sector. So that represents a big opportunity to lower carbon emissions in the state, but also generate a lot more jobs and also improve, especially focus on the environmental justice communities. The second area is with the Delaware River watershed. We're a member of the coalition led by ASBC, of 4 states that border the Delaware River, and making the business case for protecting the Delaware River watershed and educating business leaders on the connection between maintaining a healthy watershed and a healthy economy, and getting involved in policies that protect the watershed, as well as highlighting market-driven innovation that companies can adopt to manage their water resources more responsibly. So those are the two major areas that we're working on.
Thanks, Richard.
Hey, David.
right.
David,
Yes,
before we move on, can I just ask Richard and then all of our other participants? Just curious, obviously COVID's had a real impact on federal legislation at this point in terms of Congress. Can you just give us an idea of what the New Jersey legislature, are they out? Are they planning on coming back? Do they have a plan to deal with this?
Yeah, in New Jersey, well, there's definitely a lot of activity. Governor Murphy's been actively involved, and the legislature's involved as well. So I can't speak to anything real specific necessarily, but they're definitely staying engaged. They're not in the State House. New Jersey's, an epicenter.
Right.
One thing I noticed.
That was more my interest was rather than COVID specific legislation was, is it impacting their ability to handle anything else?
Yes. I mean, basically they have no bandwidth, and we've been told, and not just the legislature, not just the governor, but also businesses. We have a lot of things going on in terms of doing op-eds, all related to the initiatives I mentioned. And I'm hearing from businesses that they're kind of in survival mode right now. They're very sympathetic, and the responses are like, sorry, not now, but later.
Right.
In fact, we had the energy efficiency webinar just now, and we had 40 people registered, but only about 20 showed up. And I think for that reason. But the reason we held it was because there's a big hearing coming up at the Board of Public Utilities on the 17th, and we're looking to get business input for that. So that's why we decided to go ahead and move forward with it, even though we kind of suspected that the participation level might be, a little lower than usual.
Are those kinds of administrative things, executive branch things still going forward, hearings and things?
Yes, they are. I mean,
okay.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
great. All right, Jordan, up in Vermont, welcome.
Hey, everybody. Good to see many of you. I have a newfound appreciation for Zoom meetings. So nice to see everybody. So I'm Jordan Giaconia. I'm the Public Policy Manager with Vermont Businesses for Social Responsibility. We represent about 730 member businesses across the state, really pushing for what we call triple bottom line of people, planet, and prosperity. I will try to be as brief as I can as far as our campaign priorities. I think first and foremost right now, we've really just heavily pivoted toward COVID-19 in particular from the federal level. That's mostly involving just looking at and disseminating information on resources as they come up and hosting webinars, blog posts, member calls, whatever we can to get resources to businesses in a way that they can be as supportive as they can of their employees, of their own businesses themselves, and just make sure that we can kind of weather this storm together. On the state level, much more intensive, providing testimony for various committees of jurisdiction as they deal with this, to paint a picture of sort of how the Vermont legislature is functioning right now. They're in this, I would call it like a pseudo session. We went into recess for a full week. And then now when we come back, we're in this very limited session where committees are conducting business virtually speaking. In the event that they have to do votes, they're able to vote virtually in most instances. And then previous to that, they were basically just trying to get people in tranches and try and limit the amount of people they have in one room to conduct votes. But as far as their agenda, they're focusing purely on COVID-19 response measures, and then also trying to make 2020 budget adjustments. And then they're actually going to do a temporary budget that'll hold us through probably into the fall when we have a better picture of revenues for the state, so we can adjust everything accordingly. But it's not looking good in that regard. And on that, changes on the legislation front from COVID-19 for Vermont, the main two that have come across the transom have been one focusing on just propping up our medical industry here, and then the other and expanding access to healthcare. And then on the business side of things was looking at unemployment insurance and ensuring that COVID-19 related layoffs don't adversely affect experience ratings, and just opening up the avenues for employees to seek unemployment insurance. And then in terms of our broader 2020 policy priorities, so we kind of separate them out into, I hate using this term, but A-list and B-list priorities. On the A-list side of things, that includes, so raising the minimum wage, and the goal there, we would like to see get to $15. We did have kind of a half victory before we went out of session. We ended up passing a piece of legislation that would increase Vermont's minimum wage up to $12.55 by 2022, which was really great and wonderful to see. And that also required us to overcome have to secure that veto-proof majority for a second go around in the House and Senate. On paid family leave, we're pushing for universal paid family and medical leave. That situation got pretty complex this year with sort of a compromise measure that was being held up in the face of, it was, kind of reaching this point where between a very, very bad proposal coming from the Scott administration versus what we would kind of consider a medium compromise measure coming from the legislature, which we did end up pushing for, but it did not overcome veto, actually fell by 1 vote. And then in addition to that, also working on student loan forgiveness. So the bill that we're pushing in particular is looking to provide exceptions for $5,000 employer contributions to student loan repayments. So pretty much very much so akin to the 401k programs, and actually very proud to say we saw that in the CARES Act that recently came out on the COVID side of things. And then also on the climate front, have a very, very robust climate platform that we work with a broader coalition in the state, and includes 4 or 5 sort of central tenets. So we're looking for 100% renewable electricity. There's also a Global Warming Solutions Act piece that really codifies and turns our climate emissions goals into requirements, amongst other things. Also looking to get our efficiency utilities like Efficiency Vermont to participate in focusing not just on reducing energy consumption, but also on emissions. And then also working on the Transportation Climate Initiative as that continues to develop, but is obviously slowed down for the time being. And then we did a 100-person employee lobby day at the outset of the session. And then I was working on a video project as well as an April CEO climate lobby day, but both of those are on temporary hiatus as we sort of hold out here. And then in addition to that, we also work pretty extensively on clean water, access to childcare, and a bevy of other issues there. We're trying to be a little bit more adaptive on that side of things. But that's, sorry, I was a little bit verbose there, but the best overview I can give.
It's too bad you have nothing on your plate.
Yeah.
Michelle Thatcher. All
Hi,
right.
everyone. How are you? How are you doing? Thank you for including me on this. I just wanted to cover just 2 quick programs that I think might be of interest. One of them is our newest affiliate program. So as a U.S. Green Chamber of Commerce, we realize the power of leveraging existing chambers of commerces out there. Most of them haven't necessarily started down the path of sustainability, but some have, and we're identifying who those are, and we're bringing them into our fold and starting to collaborate together with them. So if anybody knows of a chamber of commerce in their area that might be in tune to that, go ahead and send them our way because we just want to collaborate. And I think that ties into the broader legislative initiatives, because we really utilize the work that the American Sustainable Business Council does to deliver that to our members and sponsors and contacts out there. So if we can deliver this new information to existing chambers of commerce that are, in a particular state, if you're working on a particular initiative, then we're, really happy to do that. And then the other program that we're rolling out that we'll be launching on Earth Day is the Global Climate Pledge. So www.globalclimatepledge.com. And essentially we're aiming to get 2 billion people to take climate action in the next 2 or so years by the end of 2022. So we need, the whole focus is to really engage a large global network of stakeholders and organizations that will reach out to their own individuals and members to engage them. So I don't want to take up too much time of yours, but those are just 2 new programs of ours.
Yeah, Michelle, if you could just name the few of the top states in which you have the chambers that you're working at the moment.
Yeah, we have a brand new North Florida chapter that's really very, very active. So Florida, we've been active for a number of years. California, Michigan, we've started up. Maryland. So there's different chapters that we've been working with, and it really depends on the members and how engaged they are recently. So
Perfect. Great. Thanks, Michelle. So perfect segue, because your Michigan folks should talk to our next person. Marta, do you want to jump in?
Yeah, thanks. Hi, everybody. I am Marta. I'm from Michigan, working on getting activities launched here to help get businesses engaged in more pro-equity work and more collaborative work with different business member organizations. It's a part of an impact project long-term grant. Right now, we've had to pivot quite significantly from our initial set of issues that we've been working on to be more responsive to this we're calling containment period. Our legislature has also been pivoting and only focused on that. So it's both a requirement because the ability to get any focus on our longer term issues is not possible. But anyway, our top containment period issues include paid leave, which is actually a continuation of the previous priority list we're working from, earned income tax credit expansion, expanding vote by mail, looking to have universal vote by mail, similar to Oregon. Drug affordability, which is a pullover or a carryover from our initial set of issues, as well as eliminating Medicaid work requirements. Once we get past the containment period, we'll be looking at more of a recovery and building a resilient economy, which will go more towards our previous set of policies, which include overtime protection expansion that is in process or has been in process but paused because of COVID-19. Mega tax credit caps and closing tax loopholes, that's also in progress but paused. Ethics reform, putting rules into place for cooling off period after an elected official or elected representative leaves office before they're allowed to lobby, and establish an ethics oversight committee, which doesn't exist right now. Drug affordability as well. In August, we're tentatively scheduled for the task force to put forward recommendations on policy solutions to improve drug affordability in Michigan. And so we're hopeful that we can continue that. And then college affordability has been on the list, but not quite as high of as a high top priority, not as high of a priority as the other issues.
So Marta, you didn't name the organization.
Oh, the organization that are participating? The Michigan Sustainable Business Initiative.
There you go.
There we go.
All right. So yeah, so you should talk with Michelle about who she's working with in Michigan, and we should hook them into the initiative as well. So let's see. There's someone, I can't see a name here. Just says owner.
It's Vicky. It's Vicky Parker. I don't know why that's occurring. I have to figure out.
Okay, there she is. Oh, now when you come big, I better put on my glasses to see.
No.
Hey, Vicky, go for it.
Hi, David. How are you?
Good.
Good. Sorry, I got on a little late. The governor was having a press conference, so I was trying to listen in on that and put out another fire that I was dealing with online. So my apologies for not being here at the top of the hour.
No worries. Go ahead, introduce yourself now and take it away.
Sure. So I'm Vicki Lee Parker. Hi, I'm the executive director for the North Carolina Business Council. And we've been active, I guess, for the past little over 3 years, and have about, 70 some members, but a network of probably over 3,000 to 4,000 with some of our community partners and agreements that we have. So we have quite a reach here. I'm assuming we've just been giving updates, David, on what
Yeah,
we've been doing.
yeah, it's the top priorities at the moment, you know, that your
Yeah.
policy priorities or campaigns, just the top tier ones in short
Yeah.
form, just in about a minute or so, yeah.
Sure. Well, I mean, I guess with this coming up, based off of the feedback I got from our members immediately, we kind of made getting information out about the lending programs that were available for our businesses. I know I have partnerships with quite a few of the community lenders here who are engaged with the SBA, who are SBA lenders. So I've been kind of partnering with them to get the word out to our members what type of funding is available, and just assisting them with that. Also letting them know about other resources that have been available to the members through our other community partners, and probably been working with, I don't know, 6 or 7 other really deeply involved groups. And we'll be turning our attention, now that we kind of got that information out, we're going to be turning our attention in the state legislature. They pulled together a really, I guess, a COVID committee, emergency committee. And I've heard they've already been meeting and proposing some things. So I'm going to really jump on that today and try to look at some of the things and set up. There's a portal that's been set up that we're going to try to get our members access to, so they can know what's going on and chime in on it. But apparently they've already started their meetings, and so we're trying to jump in on it on the back end to make sure we're aware what they have planned for us.
Great. All right. Thank you. All right. Over to Francie.
Hi, I'm Francie Sharon. I run the Asheville Growing Business Alliance. We're also based in North Carolina. And I also work with Project Equity based in Oakland, California through, we work with worker ownership and expanding employee ownership across the nation.
Great. You want to say anything more about what Asheville Grown is working on at the moment? You would take a minute to do that?
So yeah, really, we're just trying to stop the small business closure curve, flatten that curve right now. It seems like, you know, we're all the confusion of the relief funds rollout, the funds for workers, all of that is just, you know, leading us and all of our communities into somewhat of a panic right now. So
Yep.
Trying to mitigate that, trying to work with property owners to lend some help and leniency, and yeah, just on the ground fighting fires.
Great. Okay. Thanks for that. And, you know, obviously a little bit later on, Thomas will cover what, you know, if you've been checking out the COVID-19 resources that ASBC has been pumping out, and just cover what else we could be doing at the national level. Oh, Anna.
Hi, everybody. This is Anna from the Sustainable Business Network of Greater Philadelphia. I'm the executive director. We're also kind of in COVID crisis mode right now. All of our members are fewer, I would say the vast majority of our members are fewer than 50 employees, all local independent businesses. Jordan, similar to yours, they all practice the triple bottom line, right? People plan profitability. I was so glad to hear you say that. And so, yeah, they're just trying to keep their businesses alive right now. They're all being impacted in different ways, whether it's being mandated to close, whether it's, you know, supply chain disruptions or slower sales. Folks are, you know, worried about the now, but they're also worried about, you know, kind of the what does their business look like after this, you know, has passed, and like they can't, you know, they know that they can't rehire everyone that they had on board before. They know they have to basically rebuild their business, and so we're trying to, you know, provide them with the financial resources that that they need. I mean, we're not a lender ourselves, but here, you know, here's where the money is available. go get it. They're, but there's definitely some panic and concern there. So we're just doing our best to build community, offer community for our members as much as we can, and again, provide the resources that we can. We're also doing some advocacy that's, kind of in our power to do. So we have a program that we usually do called the Business Roundtable, where we feature elected officials and invite them to speak directly with our membership. They're really, really great conversations. And so we've so far had some council members, some state reps, and on Monday we had Congresswoman Mary Gay Scanlon, which was really amazing to get her 100% time. So that's what we keep doing, is just surfacing the needs and challenges and concerns of our membership to the powers that be. I think the biggest thing, though, that we're going to be, that I'm trying to pivot to, or I would not pivot to, but balance within all of this is, right now we're in crisis mode, obviously, and definitely very sure and sad that not all of our members are going to make it through this. At the same time, once we kind of get through peak and, we can start actually, shift away from stabilization into recovery, that there's a giant opportunity to push the mission that we have forward. So let's rebuild our economy to one that's equitable, inclusive, and climate resilient. We've had no louder moment that says the power of small businesses than this moment. And so I think there's a lot of power there if we can keep talking about that and continue to remind people, because the people have short memories in decision-making positions, but help kind of keep it on the surface. One thing that I will also say is that I think that it's really important, and David, I'm glad that ASBC is kind of putting this call together. Everything that I'm also hearing is, you guys need to you need collective action. Like, what you guys stand for is really powerful and amazing. But, there needs to be collective action because that's the challenge. That's why small business is beautiful, because it's small and local and independent, but that's also why it's challenging to get them what they need, is because there isn't a unified, there aren't enough loud voices in DC that are, kind of advocating on their behalf. So, or even at the state level. And so that's really where I want to see this go. We have priorities on local independent triple bottom line businesses, absolutely, helping more and more of them start, grow, and thrive, but also on 3 particular industries that we think are vital to triple bottom line economy. So nature-based stormwater management, energy efficiency, renewable energy, and then responsible food and beverage. I think someone else mentioned this, but we're also part of a transit coalition and also the Clean Power PA coalition. So trying to get equity, those are kind of related to the other issue areas that we have, but we're part of those groups as well.
Great, thanks, Anna.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, what a time. All right, so I know we have, Thomas and Colton, and some of you got calls from my son Griffin, who's also on the call, chiming in. But do we miss any other groups that are on the phone as well that didn't get a chance to present yet? Anyone? Okay. There's an 803 number there. Is that Thomas? Is that you as well?
No.
No. I don't know who the. Here we go. Hello, 803-600-6874. All right. Whoever you are. All right. So Thomas, thanks everyone for sharing those updates. Now I'm going to introduce you to Thomas Opal, who's come on, by storm with ASBC about 10 months ago or so plus, and is our executive vice president and based in DC. Obviously, I used to say based at our DC office, but now obviously working remotely. and the like. But I'm going to turn it over to Thomas and Colton Fagendes, one of our policy managers, to sort of run us through where things are at with ASBC, and then we'll just circle back in the last 10 minutes or so to figure out, what else could ASBC be doing in order to support your efforts and all the other groups that didn't make it on the call today, but, we've been in touch with. So Thomas, over to you.
Okay, thanks, David. And thanks to everybody for getting on this call. I think I've had the good fortune to at least virtually meet most of you. A couple of you I've actually met in person, but and look forward to the end of social distancing when we can do that again, meet in person. Like all of you, we've been in something of a crisis mode dealing with COVID-19. I hope you've had an opportunity to see the COVID pages that we have put up on our website and the resources that we're trying to make available, information that's of particular interest in, what's happening at the federal level in terms of legislation, how that impacts small business. We've got, I think we've got links to important information to legislation. We've done some webinars. I've had the good fortune to do a couple of webinars with MARTA in Michigan, and those were fun. And we've done some broader webinars as well. If you haven't checked that out, please do. And as David says, one of the things that we'd love to hear is feedback on if there are things on there that you'd like to see or things you'd like to see us do, please let us know. Before the pandemic struck, we were in the process of sort of rethinking the organization of our policy work. And COVID has suddenly taken over as a fifth category and a top priority, obviously, just because of its immediacy and the criticality to all of our members, and the existential nature of this threat, both health-wise and economically. But prior to that, we had sort of reorganized our policy into four broader categories. The high road economy, which I think most of you are probably aware, the issues like paid leave, minimum wage, diversity and inclusion, worker ownership, and equitable tax policy all come under that category. Circular economy, we have a sustainable packaging working group. We're working with federal legislators on, for example, the Udall-Lowenthal Break Free from Plastic Pollution bill. We also put in that circular economy, and some of this is a little arbitrary, but we also put in the circular economy section the work we're doing with safer chemicals, simply because those, in order to get to a circular economy, the materials we use and produce and the processes we use and produce all have an impact in terms of that, our ability to get to a truly circular economy. So it seemed like it fit best there. The third group is, or actually now fourth group is climate and energy. You could call it environment. It's essentially all of the work we're doing on carbon, on climate change, be it the Green New Deal or the climate strike campaign, the legislation both at the federal and state level in terms of the young folks who were challenging policymakers in court on their lack of action on climate change. And in that climate area, and I'll about turn it over to Colton to let him talk about these next two, but in that climate area, we have regenerative agriculture because of its impact on carbon sequestration. And then the last area is infrastructure, where we have our water programs. Colton, why don't you talk just real quickly about ag and the water stuff?
Yeah, sure. So this is Colton Fagendes, had a chance to meet a few of you, policy manager at ASBC. So yeah, and on the regenerative ag end of things, we see on the federal level, there's a few different opportunities. One is working, preparing for the next farm bill, which that won't be for a couple of years, but that's kind of always on the back burner of things that related to agriculture. And so we've been in discussions with Senator Booker, and we also Representative Pingree have both been taking a very aggressive approach to increasing funding for regenerative agriculture and soil health for the next farm bill, with some marker bills that they've introduced. And so there's for those that maybe aren't as knowledgeable about the issue, regenerative agriculture is sort of a suite of different practices that farmers can use, often sort of said going beyond organic, but improving the soil health, which then has the potential to sequester huge amounts of carbon dioxide, and also leads to water retention and cleans up our waterways, lots of different benefits for the environment. So we're working with their offices to try to build business support for those two bills going into the next farm bill cycle. But in the shorter term, there's a carbon tax sequestration bill for farmers that is Senator Bennett's is going to introduce shortly. It's probably, that schedule has probably been messed up a little bit by everything going on. But we'll be working with a few of our different partners, including Green America, who has brought together quite a few different large companies as well as smaller companies along the food and agricultural supply chain to build support for this bill, which would give a tax credit to farmers that are using soil health practices. And then we're also working with our partners on a variety of different similar soil health legislation in various different state legislatures. Again, all of that has kind of been postponed for the moment. State legislatures all have sort of a shorter window for their sessions, which will be ending here soon. And so that's, Thomas, would like me to talk about water quickly as well?
Sure, yeah, please.
Okay. So on the clean water end, various different bills being introduced to increase infrastructure spending. Those are kind of our main focus at the moment, and hopefully we're actually hoping to get a lot of those included in the COVID-19 stimulus packages that'll be coming up shortly. So there's opportunity to drastically improve investment for water infrastructure, which is desperately needing in the country at the moment. I'll just leave it there so I don't talk too much longer.
Okay, and I think, you know, like many of you, Congress right now is on a hiatus. There is talk about a fourth recovery stimulus relief package, if you will. It's taken all sorts of turns. When the conversation began, it was Speaker Pelosi and the president talking about another substantial $2 trillion, perhaps focused on infrastructure. Senator McConnell kind of threw cold water on that. So it seems like we're moving back toward, excuse me, back toward a package that would be what Pelosi calls CARES 2. Again, additional direct aid to taxpayers. Probably boosting funding for the Paycheck Protection Program and some other small business programs. Unclear at this point whether those would be more in the direct grant kind of thing, or simply additional funding for potentially forgivable loans, either whether it's just an additional amount or an extension of the period of time. Obviously, the PPP program right now, as I understand it, covers 8 weeks. There's been some talk about extending that. So it's unclear. One of the things that we are pushing for that I think others have mentioned on this at the state level is a federal paid leave program. We've obviously been advocating for some time for the Family Act. Essentially, the elements of the Family Act were incorporated into a bill drafted by Congresswoman DeLauro and Senators Murray and Gillibrand, called the Paid Leave Act, and PAID stands for something, and I can't remember now what the acronym is, but essentially it's taking the Family Act and incorporating it with expanded emergency sick leave provisions. And we're going to continue to advocate for that. No idea at this point when Congress will be back. Schedule says they're supposed to be back on the 20th. They're both supposed to be back on the 20th of April. I've talked to a couple of staffers who seem, committee work has been shut down. So there's no committee work going on in any of these areas, including COVID. So the discussions about the stimulus are largely at the leadership level and phone calls with caucus members. So I think the expectation is that the 20th is probably a day that will slip. So who knows where we'll be. But at any rate, David, you want to move on to questions?
Yeah, well, first I just want to let everyone know that we figured out, Frank, can you talk now? You're unmuted.
Yes, I can talk now.
All right.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yeah.
So we have Frank Knapp on from South Carolina we couldn't get unmuted before, but Frank, why don't you just take a minute or so to just introduce yourself, the organization, and your top priorities at the moment, and then we'll go back to opening it back up.
Sure. Thank you. I'm Frank Knapp. I'm President and CEO of the South Carolina Small Business Chamber of Commerce, serve on the board for ASBC, probably for forever, it seems like, 9 years. And we are extremely involved right now in trying to get this PPP loan program actually rolling out to helping small businesses. So we're quite pushing on that. I personally am trying to get a PPP loan for our family dog kennel. Cannot get through to do that. So it's a mess out there. And yes, they probably will need more money given the demand, but they've got to clean up the system and get this money on the street. Putting more money on top of an unworkable system is not really doing anybody any good. So that's top priority right now. So thank you for asking, David.
Hey, can I just jump in here real quick? Frank, we saw something you put out today that I thought was really, really brilliant. And I throw this out to others if we can steal your idea. And that was Frank and the South Carolina Small Business Chamber of Commerce put out a request for small businesses to relate their stories, hopefully not horror stories, but I suspect some of them will be, in dealing with SBA and trying to get these loans. And I thought it was a really great idea, and frankly meant to talk to you, Frank, about trying to sort of cooperate in that effort. For anybody on this call.
Oh, I think.
Go ahead.
So I was just going to add, Thomas. Anybody can do this. All the organizations that are out there on the call now, you ought to. It's just an idea of publicizing what the process has been to get these loans. If they're successful, great. I suspect that you're going to hear a lot of horror stories. But that is the only way of elevating this.
Well,
so what we'll do is...
The beauty of it is, if I could just finish, David, I'm sorry. The beauty of it is if everybody could collect some stories, and it doesn't have to be, Frank was asking for 10, it doesn't have to be 10, 2 or 3. One of the things that you can do and we can do is then communicate these stories to members of Congress, and before they, as Frank says, before they throw more money on top of a broken system, try to give them some idea of just how broken the system is and maybe ways to fix it.
So why don't no, it's okay. I was just going to put it into motion. So why don't we look at what Frank wrote up, translate that, put that into on the ASBC site, but also then send it back out to everyone if they want to load it on their site, or to use the link that we're collecting and we could feed the information back. Either which way is fine, as long as there's a way for folks to then share whatever information they collect
Yeah.
back
If I-
with
I can-
us.
I mean, I can offer a couple right now if there's a couple minutes.
Yeah,
This is
yeah,
Rob from SDN in Philadelphia.
yeah. So, yeah, if you want to do a couple quick to give examples,
I mean,
then that would be great.
super
Yeah, go
quick.
for it.
It's really more about the PPP at this point.
Yep.
The challenges are not every bank that small businesses, especially business owners of color, are and sort of business owners from lower income backgrounds are less likely to bank with big banks, but it's just the big banks that are the SBA approved lenders. And so there's a lot of smaller community banks and credit unions that are not processing these loans. And so the bigger banks are prioritizing their customers first and foremost. And so some of the smaller businesses and particularly minority and lower income businesses are not getting equal access to the application process in the first place. Not every bank opened up their applications at the same time, and for the dollars to be first come, first served, that's terrifying for the average business owner in this particular moment. So there's a couple equity challenges there. And so those are the two really big ones that are kind of bubbling up from SBN's conversations with our membership. The other thing that we've been hearing is two other things is that CDFIs, for some reason, are not getting money to distribute to the, for better or for worse, micro enterprise, right? So the kind of 5 to 10 employees. And so there just needs to be dollars for CDFIs, because that not only helps the smaller businesses, but it also helps the business owners from historically marginalized backgrounds that tend to work more closely with those CDFIs. And so that's just an important thing. And then the last part is kind of the frustration that all businesses are being asked to go through the exact same system, the exact same doorway at the same time. It's a little Three Stooges. And it's also, I think, highlighting kind of a lack of, like, we can understand it from the perspective of the government's level, like this is the system that's already in place, this is where the money goes, you write that kind of thing. But it's highlighting kind of a lack of understanding about the kind of how smaller businesses work, right? And so can there be different lanes, right? So if you're a business that has X number of employees or fewer, X revenue or less, you take this path. If you're kind of in this range, you take this path. Basically, like, imagine checking into a large event, and instead of going to the one table for everyone to check in at the same time, they basically say A through L, check in over here, M through R, check in over here, right? S through Z, check in over. So it just streamlines the process a little bit. So I'm not sure if there's anything that is feasible in the short term in terms of structure, other than CDFIs, and community banks. But that's what we're hearing from our membership right now.
Beautiful. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Extremely useful. And so I think, part of what ASBC could be doing is certainly, and I'm wondering, Thomas, whether or not there's also some press work that we could be doing to get some of these comments out there, because my guess is that, we've got enough groups both on the phone and then off the phone today that have got, or are beginning to collect these stories, so even from Frank and from Anna, at the moment, be able to sort of pull some press together to get this out there so we can raise the conversation around what this is meaning and the impact that it's having, in addition to being able to go to some of our legislative folks at the federal level and let them know that we're hearing this and we've got business leaders ready and willing, able to testify, as to what's not working and how it could be improved. So a couple of things that we can be doing is what I heard from there, along with being able to get up some form similar to what Frank has put out there and share that with all of our groups and, and support them in being able to take the messaging they're getting and pulling that back to others. All
I,
right.
I would say first step is, and we'll get this out today to everybody who is on the call as well as folks who couldn't make it. But please, as you're getting these stories, please send them to us too. Please share them with us, and then we'll take those next steps. Be it press release.
Is the survey we're sending out today that survey that will be able to?
No, sir. It's a different. I'll send out a different thing.
Okay. All right. So then for the last 5 minutes, what I would suggest is, now that you've also met Thomas and Colton, if there are other, things that you need to suggest that ASBC pay attention to, particularly at this moment, that's great. Know that we're trying to provide updates almost daily now on COVID-19 and what's going on at the federal level and the like. So any degree of tweaking that is appreciated. We have the initiative we started with the American Independent Business Alliance on Save Our Economy, our small business, which a number of you have signed on to. We have now initiated additional conversations with the National Family Farm Coalition and NAMA, which represents the fishing community, about how to lift up some of the farming and fishing issues, which you'll see in the update we're sending out later today. And then, I want to go back to on the previous call that we had with a number of you and others, it was suggested that we do these calls quarterly at the moment. So I just want to get some quick feedback. Does the quarterly frame work, or would checking in a month, because of what we're in the midst of with COVID, would checking in more quickly for the moment be useful and then go back to quarterly? Is this call helpful in that way? And, could we use it in other ways? But yes, so would a call be useful in a month or sooner, or should we wait just for the next quarterly call? Anyone want to weigh in?
I like the idea of checking in a month, then going to quarterly once things get closer to normal.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So anyone with a different opinion? So we do one call in a month, but then we go back to quarterly, once we're out of the, out of this pandemic crisis moment and the like. That sound right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, great. All right. Any other folks want to slip something in the remaining 2 minutes?
Yeah. Well, this is Vicki. I had a question for Anna, actually, when her mentioning about the CDFIs. So, Anna, are you saying that there was no funding allotted or designated for the CDFIs in the last round of funding, or is it just not somehow trickling down to them?
The Paycheck Protection Program needed to go through SBA approved lenders. Some of the CDFIs, like as far as locally, not all of them are SBA approved lenders, right? So the big ones, like Philadelphia's Industrial Development Corporation, they were processing some applications, but the PPP, from everything that we've been hearing from our membership, and as well as some of the local CDFIs, that businesses weren't able to go through those organizations to get access to the PPP.
So I guess my other question is, it sounds like we're going to be collecting stories. Are we going to be offering, I guess, solutions? And I guess that goes back to David and Thomas, like with the press release, how will we address what Anna just mentioned, for example?
Yeah. So what we'll be doing is sort of updating the set of priorities then, that we're listing out then to get businesses to sign on. So this, whether it's under the Save Our Economy frame that we've had and we launched, or we create something different, I think the aim is to articulate then the additional solutions that are needed to address this. So it's not just the paid leave and it's, the payroll protection program that we advocated for, but it's then fixes to the existing program that we could also articulate and advocate for. So send those ideas to us, and we'll try to incorporate those in terms of the fixes that you suggest. So, like we were able to advocate a little bit around worker ownership and ESOPs, et cetera, and so on. That came to us from some of our members. So we'll push that out. We'll keep collecting that and keep pushing it out and try to integrate that in to the set of asks that we're making at the national level. So we're at the top of the hour and we're getting some feedback from some other folks anyway right now. But so I want to thank everyone for taking the time today, and we're here for you as best as we can. So feel free to reach out to myself, to Thomas, to Colton, to our team, and we got to be in this together. So so please stay in touch, and we'll be back in touch shortly. So thanks everyone, and stay healthy and safe.
You too. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye, guys. Stay safe.
You too. Thanks.